Hello, my name is Andrew, and today we're doing a long-term review of the Vibram KSO ECO WOOL. So overall, the Vibram V-Trek is still my favorite barefoot shoe of all time, but I like the KSO ECO WOOL for kind of like colder weather. It's perfect right now because it's getting into fall and it's not really wet, but because the wool is so soft and felt like, I mean, you can even hear it. Kind of doesn't even feel like a toe shoe. It's more like a barefoot slipper sock with a really tough sole. And I think for anyone who hasn't tried toe shoes before and you don't like the idea of having things between your toes, this would be the best option to go with because you really don't even notice it's there. And wool also breathes really well, so it has a nice temperature range. You can get these up to around 70 degrees. I mean, you can go hotter up into the 80s and your feet will get warm, but the nice thing about wool is that it's very moisture wicking, so it just draws the water straight off your skin. Then because the wool is fairly thick, you can get down to about 40 degrees with these, or even lower if you're running because you're generating a lot of body heat. Although especially between the toes, there is no water resistance whatsoever with the KSO or any Vibrams. You don't want to take these out when it's like just above freezing because if you step in any kind of moisture at all, it's just gonna go straight in through the toes here, and then you're gonna have a really bad time. Up top though, I love the lacing system. It's got a drawstring and it's very easy to take on and off. Plus there's a little Velcro portion here, so you can just put the lace tab right there. One thing I like to do with these is I just kind of fold it over. I have a little bit of extra drawstring laced over, so I just put the drawstring underneath the Velcro there and it holds it in place and keeps any extra out there so that I'm not like catching it on something. One thing I wish was different about them though was that they're a little bit higher, maybe like the V-Trek or even higher, kind of like a Converse cut, because they're meant for colder weather, right? It's like, why would you have a lower cut shoe? I don't know. In terms of the sole though, it's 3 millimeters, so this is one of the thinnest, most flexible, highest sensitivity barefoot shoes you can get. And with the separate toes, you just get such a nice roll down and so much sensitivity. It's just like being barefoot. But the KSO sole is also wicked grippy. Like I use it for climbing trees a lot, and you can basically just Spider-Man your way up anything from rocks to trees to boulders. And even though it's 3 millimeters, Vibram makes the toughest rubber in the world, so I've had no problems with the durability on these at all. And even with the V-Treks, which I've had for 8 years and 4,000 miles, like, yeah, they're a little bit worn, but I mean, come on, 8 years? The difference with the KSO sole though is that it is a little more flexible than the V-Trek, and because it's so thin, it's a great shoe for road running, as well as gym and lifting, and casual too, because they're pretty low key, you know? I feel like making the toes the same color as the upper makes them less recognizable as like toe shoes or even barefoot shoes, whereas with the V-Trek, you definitely know that it's a toe shoe. And then one last detail, they do have these little cuts here on the sole, which help a bit for going up and down hills, especially if it's like rocky hills. But if you're trying to trail run on like really steep hills with lots of mud, these aren't gonna cut it. So like I said, the Vibram V-Trek are still my favorite barefoot shoes of all time. For summer, of course, they're still not any better for winter, but also have a wide toe box. I feel like you notice the separate toes a little bit more in these because they have more structure, but the upper is also wool. It's not quite as fuzzy, and it's a little bit more durable. You've got some reinforcement here and then some more open areas towards the top of the foot for breathability. The higher ankle is nice for a little bit of warmth. Plus it's got just a tiny bit of padding, so if you're new to barefoot shoes or barefoot toe shoes, the V-Trek is an excellent option because the padding really isn't enough to mess with the barefoot experience. It still feels really thin, but underneath you've got a 4 millimeter sole, so just a little bit thicker than the KSO, and it definitely feels very protective. This is the most protective 4 millimeter sole I've ever tried, but still lots of agility with the toes. It really feels like wearing armor going on a rougher terrain because of these denser panels here. Then you've got the same thing on the back, little soft spot under the arch as well because most times people don't have callus here. But yeah, the V-Trek is my go-to shoe for pretty much anything. I've used it for road running, for trail running, for backpacking even. I've used it at the gym for lifting when I used to leg press 500 pounds. And with the wool upper, it's kind of multi-season as well, as long as it's not too cold and wet. Like if I stack up a couple layers of Injinji merino wool toe socks, then you know I can easily wear these down to 30 degrees as long as it's dry. That's assuming I'm running though. If I'm walking, then yeah, these can get pretty cold. Oh yeah, in terms of sizing, I think these run the most true out of any Vibrams. I'm kind of between sizes, so usually I go down a size or sometimes even 2 sizes. But because the KSO ECO WOOL is more casual, I found that my 44 worked fine for me, which is what I get in Vivo and pretty much every other brand. But in general, because of the separate toes, Vibrams are meant to fit more like a glove than a shoe, so you can oftentimes get away with going down to a lower size. Like most Vibrams, they wear really well. I've only had these for a year, but I've got a couple spring and winter seasons on them. There's very little wear on the sole. Plus the glue is held perfectly fine. I don't have anything separating here so far. Even the V-Trek, which is 8 years old, is still pretty much perfect on the glue. There are just a few places where it's coming off slightly. But if you ever have that happen, what you can actually do is buy this stuff called shoe goo, and then wherever it's coming separated, you just put a little drop in there and you just lightly clamp it for 24 hours and then, you know, it'll be fine for another 2 or 3 months. A good complement to the V-Trek and the KSO ECO WOOL is the V-Alpha. And this is my favorite barefoot shoe for trail running because it's just ridiculously light. Actually still has a wool blend upper, although it's definitely not as fuzzy as the ECO WOOL or the V-Trek. And while it has some nice toe protection up front, it's definitely more minimal over top, which is kind of the point. It's meant to be lighter and faster. Same Velcro system, though. I wish the V-Trek had this because it's awesome. And because the upper is thinner, this is a great one for hot weather. It breathes really well. Plus the sole is slightly thinner than the V-Trek at 3.7 millimeters, but a little bit thinner than the KSO. So flexibility is great, but there is a little bit more protection than some of Vibram's casual shoes. And it's got a more aggressive tread as well. So I like to use this for trail running on more slippery terrain. But if you do go over larger, sharper rocks, then the V-Trek definitely offers more protection. If you want a non-toe shoe option, this is the Wildling Tanuki. Toe box is more medium wide, but the upper is literally made out of paper and it's so breathable that when you get a summer breeze, it just goes like straight through the shoe. Of course, Wildling has a bunch of different styles. You can get winter ones that have more wool-like insulation or even a higher cut like the chestnut that I reviewed. But in terms of the sole, it's 3.5 millimeters. So really similar to the KSO, some excellent ground feel, very good flexibility. It's got kind of a tabby design. And this is Wildling's original sole, but they also have like a more sealed sole. So if you want them for winter, it provides more protection than something like this. In general though, Wildling is a little bit better for casual than Vibram. The rubber is not quite as grippy or durable. It's more meant for roads and maybe some light gravel. But like the V-Alpha, just super light. Feels like almost nothing. Finally, we've got the Mukishoes Jasper. This is another one that feels like a feather. It's got a wide toe box, but there's a ton of room up on top. So if you have higher volume feet or a lot of toe splay, this is a great option because you can open the laces up. And then also because the sole is so flexible, it almost becomes like an extra wide shoe. It does have a stitched sole, which is awesome for durability. And it's kind of got the same coloring as the Vibram V-Trek, which I love, that sort of like black and gum. Mukishoes lower cut shoes though tend to have a lot of room around the ankle. So if you're someone like me with skinnier ankles, you might like a taller shoe like the Mukishoes Duna because it just gives a little bit more security around there to wrap around your ankle. But in terms of the sole, it's 3 millimeters. And even though it's the same as the KSO, it feels like a thinner rubber. It's definitely not as durable, but for going on streets, if you just want absolute max ground feel and as much agility as you possibly can, like being completely barefoot, you really can't beat Mukishoes. And even though it's not super tough for trails, it is really grippy, so it's another good option if you need a non-slip sole. Plus Mukishoes uses all natural materials. This is organic cotton, so they're one of the best options if you're looking for the most ethical and pure type material shoes. All right, so that's my long-term review of the Vibram KSO ECO WOOL and friends, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can shop with the referral links down below. Browse and filter more products with the shoe finder tool at my website barefootwear.org, or watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about the Vibram KSO ECO WOOL or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.